You never loved us, Kody, and today the entire world will see the truth. Those words repeated in Christine's mind as she sat at the plaintiff's table, her heart racing so loudly that she couldn't hear anything else. This wasn't a battle in court. This wasn't formality or signatures. This was the day her life had been leading toward, the day years of suffering, betrayal, and heartache would be brought out before the courtroom's harsh lights. The room itself was electric with tension. The courtroom was a buzz of whispers, soft murmurs rolling across the audience like thunder in the distance. Cameras flashed in staccato bursts, their strobes cutting through the shadows. Outside, news trucks were parked in neat rows, reporters elbowing each other for a place, eager to catch some glimpse of the people at the center of this tempest, the family America believed they knew. Inside, there was another kind of storm, one composed of shattered trust and broken hearts. Christine swallowed hard, her mouth and throat desert dry. She bunched her hands together in her lap, trying to still their shaking. Her nails bit into her palms, but the pain kept her grounded. She had to remain strong. On the table before her was a tidy pile of papers, neatly sorted by her attorney. Text messages, photos, and statements of testimony. But Christine's eyes continued to wander back to one plain envelope, standing unaccompanied on the edge of the table. That envelope was her ammunition. The last bit of proof, the evidence she'd kept hidden for months. Even when fear had whispered to get rid of it, she'd clutched it during sleepless nights, holding it like a rope to the future, knowing that when she needed to, it might alter everything. Next to her, her attorney leaned in. "Christine," she spoke softly. "Are you ready?" Christine didn't respond initially. Her chest tightened, her breath came in short and ragged gasps. She remembered her children, all the tears they'd ever cried, all the times they'd felt abandoned. Yes, she was ready. She had to be. To the other side of the room, Kody Brown sat rigidly at the table for the defendant. His body was tense, his shoulders braced as if sheer obstinacy would somehow be sufficient to win the fight. His jaw was clenched, and his lips were compressed into a thin, hard line. He didn't glance Christine's way. He didn't even look in her direction. To his side, Robin Brown sat close, nearly cemented there, her manicured hand clamped around his arm. She leaned in on him at all times, whispering, her voice stinging but low. From the growing darkness of Kody's face with every whisper, it was evident Robin wasn't necessarily consoling him. She was stoking his rage. In the background, two other women sat in silence. Janelle and Mary. The family that had once been united by commitment and faith, now resembled strangers who were coerced into occupying the same room. Janelle sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face pale but serene. She had always been rock solid, the quiet peacekeeper, but today, her silence was leaden, as if it was suffocating. Mary sat farther away, slumped in her posture, staring at the table in front of her. Her face was expressionless, though her hands clenched anxiously in her lap. She didn't talk. She didn't glance at Kody or Christine. She simply sat there, as if attempting to become invisible. The gallery behind them was full. Reporters packed the front two rows, laptops out, pens skittering across notebooks as they attempted to get every word. The next rows were packed with observers, legal assistants, and a handful of members of the public who had queued at dawn for a glimpse of this trial. Some were veterans of the Sister Wives, the reality series that had once presented this family as a symbol of love and harmony in a plural marriage. Others were in attendance solely for the drama, eager to see the personal suffering of a once famous family poured into the public record. Christine felt their gaze upon her, the weight of their judgment, their wonder, their sympathy. But she didn't care what they said. She wasn't here for them. She was here for her children. Her attorney leaned forward again. "Christine, remember, keep your responses clear and calm. The judge must see you as solid and believable. Don't let Kody's side get to you." Christine nodded, although her stomach roiled. She had experienced Kody's wrath before. She knew how easily his sweetness turned to brutality. But today would be different. Today, he couldn't mask behind sweet words or empty lies. The bailiff's voice came suddenly, crisp and commanding. All rise for the Honorable Judge Daniels. The room came alive. All the people stood, the benches groaning under the hasty movement. Christine stood on unsteady legs, her hand on the edge of the table for balance. Her pulse was drumming in her ears. The heavy wooden door at the rear of the courtroom opened and Judge Daniels entered. He was a tall, silver-haired man, with a face etched by years of experience. His countenance was stern but not unfriendly, the kind of presence that brought respect without the need to raise his voice. He sat down, looking around the courtroom with piercing eyes. "You may be seated," he said. They all settled into seats. The inhalation of dozens of bodies into chairs was a collective heavy breath, drawn and exhaled. Christine's eyes darted to Kody. He was gazing directly ahead, his expression neutral. Robin was still speaking softly to him, her hand lying guardian-like on his back. Christine flashed with anger. Not at Robin herself, but at Kody for letting himself be hidden away, even now from what he had done. The judge's voice cut through her thoughts. "This court is now in session," he stated. "We are here today to hear the case of Brown versus Brown, a custody case with multiple parties and minor children. Both parties will be heard and will have the opportunity to present their case, and I expect decorum to be maintained at all times." Christine breathed in sharply, her lungs on fire. This was it, there would be no going back now. The judge looked first at Kody's table, then Christine's. "Mr. Brown," he said, "do you have any opening remarks?" Kody's lawyer stood smoothly, getting into a firm declaration of Kody being a good father and Christine being emotionally unstable. Christine tightened her fists in her lap, biting back words. She couldn't combat every lie. Not yet. She had to choose the right moment. As the lawyer continued speaking, Christine glanced over at the gallery behind them. Her children were there, huddled together in a small subdued group. Some of them were older now, their faces toughened by years of disappointment. Others were still young, their faces filled with confusion and pain. Her heart was shattered at seeing them. They had been through so much. They should have a father who noticed them, who struggled for them, who chose them every day. They had Kody instead, a man who used them like chess pieces, moving them in and out of his life, when it was convenient and leaving them when it wasn't. Christine blinked away tears, squared her shoulders and clutched the tabletop. When the judge looked at her and said, "Mrs. Brown, you may make your opening statement," she stood up. Her voice was soft at first, almost fragile, but there was iron underneath the tremble. "Your Honor," she began, "I'm here today because my children deserve to be safe. They deserve to be loved. And for too long their father has given them neither." She paused, letting the words sink in. Kody's head snapped toward her, his face darkening, but Christine didn't flinch. "This case isn't about bitterness," she continued. "It's not about revenge or jealousy. It's about truth. It's about children who have been ignored, dismissed, and harmed, and a man who would not own up." The judge nodded, his face thoughtful. "Very well," he replied. "Let us continue." Christine sat down slowly, her heart pounding. As the first witness took the stand, she looked again at the envelope on the table. It sat there, tiny and inconspicuous, but strong enough to destroy all the deceptions Kody had constructed. She wasn't yet prepared to produce it. Not yet, but soon. And when she did, nothing would ever be the same again. Christine's attorney stood up from her chair, with smooth ease, a calm and assured-looking woman, in a navy blue suit. "Your Honor," she stated, her voice assertive but steady, "we would like to subpoena our first witness, Mrs. Christine Brown." The judge gestured. "Mrs. Brown, come forward." The words rolled through the courtroom, like the ringing of a far-off bell. Christine's breath caught in her chest. For an instant she was paralyzed. Her legs were heavy, as if rooted to the spot. Her lawyer nudged her gently. "You can do this," she whispered. "You've been preparing for this day for a long time. Just tell the truth." Christine nodded, swallowing hard. She rose to her feet and walked toward the witness stand. Each step felt like she was wading through water, slow and heavy. The courtroom seemed impossibly large now, the distance between her table and the stand, stretching out like a marathon. Her kids' faces appeared as she passed among them. Some had tear-filled eyes. Others were impassive. Their faces were a blend of hope, fear, and tragedy. Christine's heart contracted miserably. She longed to embrace them, to assure them that everything was going to be all right. But she couldn't. Not yet. When she stood at the stand, she put her hand on the Bible and promised to speak the truth. Her voice was a little shaky as she uttered the words, but there was no doubt she would tell the truth, no matter if it broke it all apart. Seated at last, Christine wrapped her hands around each other in her lap tightly, reminding herself to breathe slowly and steadily. The judge looked at her with a calculated gaze. "You may continue," he told her attorney. Christine's attorney moved forward. "Mrs. Brown," she started softly, "can you explain to the court what led you to request custody?" Christine drew in a breath, fighting back tears as she looked at her children once more. And then she spoke. Christine's pain unfolds. "For years," she whispered, "I thought that if I could just remain tough, that if I could just keep on loving everyone enough, our family could make it. But love isn't enough when only one person is struggling for it." Her voice shook, but she didn't quit. "Kody and I have 6 kids together. I gave everything I had to raising them, to building a safe, happy home. I thought we were partners." She took a pause, her lips shuddering, as she struggled to keep her voice steady. "But I was wrong." She spoke of long, lonely nights. Nights when Kody vowed he would come home, but failed to do so. Nights spent sitting on the couch, watching the front door, expecting a knock that never arrived. The kids would ask, "Where's Dad?" Christine said, sobbing. "And I'd say every time that he was busy, or tired, or working on someone else." But soon they quit asking. They learned not to expect him. The room was completely quiet, with the exception of Christine's voice. Even the reporters ceased typing, their fingers poised over their computers. Christine dried her tears with shaking fingers, and went on. "It wasn't about missing dinner, or reading them a bedtime story. It was how he made them feel like they didn't matter." Her attorney moved closer, her voice measured but assertive. "Can you provide the court with an example of this neglect?" Christine nodded, her throat constricting. "Last year, our son had a significant surgery. It was a frightening day. He hurt, was afraid, and needed his father." Her voice broke. "Kody vowed he'd be there. He swore he wouldn't miss it. But when the time arrived..." She paused, her lungs laboring as she struggled to catch her breath. The judge shifted forward. "Mrs. Brown, take your time." Christine held the lip of the stand. "When the time arrived, Kody didn't appear," she said at last. "He was at Robin's residence, with her children. Our son woke up after surgery, calling for him, and all I could do was hold him and lie and tell him that Daddy needed to be there but couldn't." Her tears filled the room. Even the audience members were weeping silently now, tissues clutched to their faces. In the back row, Janelle covered her face with her head, tears streaming down. Mary sat stiffly, hands clenched around her knees, so hard her knuckles were white. Robin moved uncomfortably and looked over at Kody, who was stone-faced. The lawyer's gentle push. Christine's attorney allowed her a moment of time to calm down before proceeding. "Mrs. Brown, you've told us about missed events and broken promises. But how did this affect your children emotionally?" Christine's face crumpled. "They felt invisible," she whispered. "They would watch Kody walk past them like they weren't even there. They started competing for his attention, doing anything to make him notice them. Good grades, sports, chores. But no matter what they did, it was never enough." Her voice trembled, rising with rage now. "One evening my youngest daughter asked me whether her dad didn't love her because she wasn't special enough." Christine buried her hand in her mouth and wept. "Not one child should ever have to ask that." The gallery gasped as one. Some reporters shared shocked glances, already typing the quote into their reports. Christine's lawyer's tone was stern but gentle. "And where was Mr. Brown all this time?" Christine's eyes narrowed. "With Robin," she replied flatly. "Always with Robin. Always putting her kids first." When Robin's name was said, she stiffened, her mouth compressing into a thin line. She whispered frantically to Kody, but he said nothing. His eyes were still trained on Christine, hard and unyielding. Christine confronts Kody directly. Christine stood now and turned to Kody, her voice trembling with emotion. I pleaded with you, Kody. I pleaded with you to attend their school plays, their graduations, their birthdays. I pleaded with you to show up when they were ill or afraid. Her voice cracked. And every single time you chose somebody else. Kody finally responded, his face red with anger. That is not true, he yelled, slapping his hand down on the table. The judge rapped his gavel hard. Order in the court. Mr. Brown, you will stay silent until it is your turn to speak. Kody slumped back into his seat, his angry glare fixed on Christine. But she didn't blink this time. She stood her ground, her eyes blazing with cool, unfaltering determination. No more excuses, Kody, she declared, her voice firm. No more lies. You left them. You left all of us. The courtroom was so quiet that it seemed the entire world was holding its breath. The moment that shook the courtroom, Christine's attorney moved forward, feeling the momentum. Mrs. Brown, she asked gently, is there anything else you would like the court to know before we finish your testimony? Christine nodded slowly. She grasped the glass of water on her bedside table, her hand shaking a little as she drank from it. Then she gazed straight at the judge. I remained silent for so long because I believed. I believed if I kept Kody safe, possibly my children would be secure. Perhaps we could maintain some sort of peace. She shook her head, tears running freely once more. But silence didn't keep them safe. It only kept him safe. Christine pulled something from her bag and produced a small dog-eared journal. This is my daughter's diary, she said. She wrote in it every night. And one night I discovered this entry. Her voice hesitated as she read the words out. Dear diary, today Dad did not look at me again. I think maybe if I just disappear, he will not be so angry at me anymore. The whole courtroom gasped. A few people openly wept. Even the judge's face softened. His eyes weighed down with sadness. Christine's voice was a whisper now. No child should ever feel like they need to disappear to be loved. She shut the journal and held it against her chest, quietly crying. The judge's reaction, Judge Daniels cleared his throat, visibly affected but retaining his decorum. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You may step down. Christine nodded, rising slowly. As she made her way back to her seat, her children reached out to her from the gallery, and she briefly touched their hands, finding strength in their small, warm fingers. The courtroom was completely still. As she sat back down, even the reporters were reluctant to shatter the moment with the clacking of their keyboards. Christine's attorney leaned in close. You were perfect, she whispered. You spoke your truth. Christine did not reply. She simply gazed ahead, her hand resting guardedly on the sealed envelope still sitting on the table. The most compelling evidence had not even been presented yet. But soon, she vowed to herself. Soon Kody's deceptions would fall apart, and the world would finally realize what a man he was. The courtroom remained in stunned silence following Christine's heartbreaking testimony. There were still tears on the faces of some onlookers, and the words seemed to linger in the air. Even Judge Daniels paused to compose himself before he spoke. Mr. Brown, the judge instructed gravely. You may now respond. Step up here, please. Kody stood slowly, bracing his shoulders. His gestures were slow, calculated. The movements of a man who was set on taking control of the script again. Robin gripped his hand hard before he stepped away from the table, leaning into his ear and whispering something. Christine's heart raced as she watched him stride towards the witness stand. He moved with the same swagger that had once captivated her, the same charisma that had mesmerized the reality show audience for years. But today Christine did not see a husband or a father. She saw a man who had constructed his universe on manipulation and deception. Kody put his hand on the Bible, affirming that he would speak the truth. He spoke in a calm, nearly unfilling tone. When he took his seat, he kept his eyes focused squarely on the judge, avoiding Christine's intensely. Kody's cool, calculated start. Mr. Brown, his lawyer opened, standing beside him. Can you tell us about your relationship with your children, and what it means to be their father? Kody edged forward, talking in a smooth, controlled voice, like a well-oiled politician. My job as a father, he stated, has always been to give, guard and direct my children. That has never changed. Christine's attorney gave a soft, amazed laugh. But Kody kept talking unabated. I worked hard to provide for my family. While Christine portrays me as an absentee parent, the reality is she was frequently a handful to deal with. She caused unnecessary stress on the family, which everyone, particularly the children, suffered from. Christine's eyes grew wide, her mouth falling slightly in shock. He was deflecting the blame back to her, just as she dreaded. Could you expand on that, Mr. Brown? His lawyer encouraged. Kody nodded seriously. Christine always has a tendency to embellish. She feeds on drama. When she didn't get her way, she would manipulate situations so that she would appear as a victim. He looked briefly at Christine, his face cold. She's doing the same thing today. Christine clutched the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. She felt like screaming, denying his accusations. But her lawyer put a soothing hand on her arm, almost begging her to remain silent. Portraying Christine as the villain, Kody's lawyer started pacing slowly in front of the witness stand. Mr. Brown, Christine swore that you were absent during special times in your children's lives. Surgeries, birthdays, graduations. How do you respond to these accusations? Kody let out a harsh breath, as if exhausted from the burden of Christine's alleged deceptions. I was present for my children whenever I could, he asserted. But there were times when I had responsibilities to the rest of the family. As you're aware, ours is a plural marriage. Managing multiple households is complex. Christine frequently failed to appreciate that. He leaned forward, his voice rising with frustration. There were evenings when I had to reassure Robin's children, because they were not grasping our particular family situation. Christine interpreted that as favoritism. But it wasn't. It was me acting as a father to all of my kids, not hers alone. Robin wiped her eyes with a tissue, visibly touched by what he said. To the naked eye it may have appeared to be real emotion. But Christine was smarter than that. She had witnessed this act too often before. Christine's attorney leapt to her feet. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Brown is trying to reword the facts, instead of answering the question straight out. The judge deliberated for a second before inclining his head. Mr. Brown, please limit your answers to the actual occurrences brought up. Kody nodded rigidly. Of course, Your Honor. Kody's version of the surgery incident. Christine's attorney sat back down, seething quietly. The lawyer for Kody went another route, focusing on the most painful of stories Christine had told, the day that their son had surgery. Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, said under oath that you skipped him having surgery in order to spend the day at another home. Is this accurate? Kody scrunched up a face of feigned grief. Absolutely not, he insisted. I was handling an emergency crisis at Robin's house that day. One of her children was experiencing a major emotional meltdown. I had to act on a tough decision in the spur of the moment. Christine took a gasp for air. He was spinning the tale so thoroughly it was nearly incomprehensible. Kody went on, his voice breaking just enough for dramatic emphasis. It wasn't that I didn't care about my son. I love him very much. But as a father of so many children, sometimes I have to be two places at once. I thought Christine knew that. He turned at last, making eye contact with her. But she didn't. Rather than helping me, she used the opportunity to demonize me. To say I abandoned my child. That isn't fair. The courtroom murmured in response. Some people seemed moved by Kody's emotional display. Others looked skeptical. Christine's lawyer leaned over to her and whispered urgently. Stay calm. We'll dismantle this later. Attacking Christine's credibility. Kody's attorney switched tactics. Mr. Brown, in your opinion, why is Christine seeking full custody now? After so many years. Kody didn't hesitate. This isn't about the kids, he said bluntly. This is about revenge. Christine flinched, as if struck. Christine quit our marriage because she couldn't deal with sharing me with other wives. She never overcame her jealousy of Robin. His tone became stronger with every word. She's upset that my marriage to Robin is healthy. She's upset that I didn't choose her. And now she's using our kids as weapons to hurt me. Gasp waves went through the gallery. Christine's children fidgeted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly disturbed by Kody's accusations. Christine's attorney jumped to his feet at once. Objection. These comments are inflammatory and speculative. The judge held up a hand. Sustained. Mr. Brown, try to keep your testimony factual. Kody raised his hands in jest. Of course, Your Honor. I needed the court to get Christine's motives. Christine shook her head, tears silently running down her face. He was not only defaming her as a mother, he was defaming her character, attempting to portray her as vengeful and unstable. The perfect father act. The lawyer shifted, allowing Kody to look sympathetic once more. Mr. Brown, what relationship do you envision for yourself with your children from here forward? Kody's face relaxed, his voice warm and soft suddenly. I want to be there for them, he said, his voice full of emotion. I want to teach them, to counsel them. I do not want them to grow up believing that their father left them. Christine nearly laughed out loud at the hypocrisy, but she bit her tongue so hard she tasted blood. Kody reached for a tissue, dabbing at his eyes dramatically. I know I've made mistakes, he said. But everything I've ever done has been out of love. Even when Christine misunderstood my actions, my heart was always in the right place. Robin sniffled audibly, hugging into him as if his words had touched her emotionally. Some of the members of the gallery even nodded pityingly. Christine's attorney grumbled to herself. Unbelievable. The tension peaks. Christine could not sit any longer. As Kody went on about his so-called sacrifices, her whole body shook with anger. Finally she got up, not able to remain silent for another moment. Lie, she bellowed, her words slicing across the courtroom. You never cared about them, Kody, you never have. The room exploded into pandemonium. Gasps and murmurs hung in the air as the judge pummeled his gavel for what seemed like minutes. Order. Order. He boomed. Mrs. Brown, get down from there now. Christine fell back into her seat, panting, tears obscuring her eyes. Kody grinned, barely. But that was enough for Christine to notice. It was the same grin he had employed so many times throughout their marriage, when he knew he had emerged victorious in a fight. But this wasn't finished. Christine still possessed the envelope, and once its contents were discovered, Kody's smug satisfaction would completely disintegrate. Closing of Kody's testimony. As the courtroom quieted, Kody's lawyer concluded the testimony. Your Honor, my client has overwhelmingly proven his devotion and love for his children. Christine's allegations are motivated by personal bitterness, not reality. The judge nodded, then addressed Kody. Thank you, Mr. Brown. You can step down. Kody stood, making his way back to his table with Robin grasping his arm. He was triumphant. A man who clearly believed he had won the room over. Christine glared at him, her fists tight. He believed he had won. He believed that his performance had duped everyone. But he hadn't anticipated what came next. Because Christine wasn't finished. The truth was going to surface, and when it did, it was going to ruin everything Kody had just established. The courtroom was filled with soft whispers as Kody returned to his place, Robin holding onto his arm like a lifeline. He remained unruffled, practically smirking, as if the man who thought he'd already won. Christine remained stone still at the plaintiff's table. Her fingers shook a little, but her expression was impassive, a mask skillfully put together to conceal the tempest raging within her. Next to her was the sealed white envelope, the same one she'd taken with her into court that morning. It was her ace, her last card to play. Her attorney inched over and talked to her in a hushed, urgent tone. Christine, this is it. Are you ready to do this? Christine did not respond right away. Her head flashed with visions. Her children's eyes. The crying nights spent alone. The deceptions that Kody had practiced for years to silence her. She finally whispered in response. her voice firm but laced with anguish. "I don't have an option. They have the right to hear the truth." The judge's throat cleared, focusing all attention. "Mrs. Brown, you can call your next witness or submit further evidence now." Christine slowly stood up with the envelope, clutched in both her hands. Her whole frame trembled, but her voice, once she began to speak, was firm and authoritative. "Your Honor," she declared, her eyes meeting the judge's. "I have something that will change everything." The calm before the storm. Kody's smug face wavered for a split second. "What is she saying?" he growled to Robin. Robin's eyes went wide, panic crossing her face. "I don't know," she whispered, shivering. Christine moved forward, each step calculated. "This envelope," she held it aloft for everyone to see, "holds proof that Kody Brown has not merely failed our children, but has actively betrayed them." And this court. Gasps filled the room. The judge raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "You, Mrs. Brown, I will remind you that making false accusations has very heavy penalties. Are you quite sure?" Christine's voice did not falter. "I am, Your Honor. These aren't accusations. They're facts." She put the envelope down on the table in front of her, gazing down at it as if it were alive. For an instant, the room was so quiet you could hear the faint tick of the courtroom clock. Christine's attorney drew a breath and spoke to the judge. "Your Honor, with your permission, we'd like to enter this evidence into the record." The judge nodded solemnly. "Proceed." Kody loses his composure as Christine carefully opened the envelope. Kody suddenly stood up, his voice booming across the courtroom. "Objection," he shouted, his face turning red with anger. "This is outrageous. She's just trying to humiliate me in public." The judge slammed his gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Brown. You will have your opportunity to reply once the evidence is brought forward." Kody paused, clearly fuming, but he gingerly subsided back into his seat. Robin held his arm in a tight grip, speaking urgently under her breath. "Kody, what if she—" "Shut up!" Kody growled through gritted teeth. "She doesn't have anything. She's bluffing." But at the back of Kody's mind, he wasn't quite so certain. Christine's smooth, unruffled composure was something he'd never witnessed from her before. For the first time, a hint of fear crept into his eyes. The revelation continues. Christine removed the first paper from the envelope and held it high. "This," she said, her tone slicing through the tension, "is a set of bank statements indicating that Kody transferred funds earmarked for our kids' education and medical bills into private accounts solely managed by him and Robin." Gasps and whispers filled the air. Kody's lawyer leapt to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. That has nothing to do with the custody case." Christine's attorney was prepared. "Your Honor, this is directly relevant to the credibility of Mr. Brown as a parent and to his capacity to act in the best interests of the children." The judge weighed for a moment, then nodded. "Overruled, the evidence will be admitted." Christine's heart was racing as she arranged the papers out on the evidence table for all to view. "These records," she went on, "show that while Kody was saying he was barely able to make ends meet to care for all of his children, he was quietly sending thousands of dollars to pay for luxury vacations, private gifts to Robin, and investments in other people's names." Christine faced Kody, her voice shuddering with anger. "You made our children go without, Kody. You made me decide whether to pay for their medication or their field trips, while you were splurging on Robin's jewelry behind my back." The courtroom exploded. Even the usually quiet Janelle and Mary gasped loudly, their faces reflecting shock and betrayal. The video evidence. Christine wasn't done yet. She picked again from the envelope and produced a tiny USB drive. "And that's not the end of it," she added, her hands shaking. "This drive holds a video recording. An interview Kody never imagined anyone would ever hear." Kody's face lost all its color. He leapt out of his seat again, almost knocking over his chair. "Absolutely not," he bellowed. "This is an invasion of my privacy. It's against the law." The judge's voice thundered over his outcry. "Mr. Brown, sit down, or I will have you removed from this courtroom." Kody froze, his chest pumping with rage, and slowly sat back down. But his eyes were frantic now, flitting between Christine the judge and the USB drive like a caged beast. Christine's attorney came up to the bench and handed the USB to the court clerk. In seconds, a big screen at the front of the courtroom came to life. The video started playing. Kody's words, his own betrayal. Kody was shown sitting at a kitchen table with Robin. He didn't realize he was being taped. On the screen, his words could be heard loud and clear. Christine is so gullible, she really thinks I care what becomes of those children. The reality is, once they're grown, they're on their own. I'm done making sacrifices for them. Robin's voice came back, trembly but intelligible. Kody, you don't have to say that. But Kody just laughed harshly. Why shouldn't I? It's the truth. The only children that are important to me anymore are yours, Robin. They're the future. The others, they were just responsibilities. The courtroom erupted into pandemonium. Janelle had her hand over her mouth, crying. Mary shook her head violently as she looked at Kody with horror. Even the judge's normally calm face contorted in visible disgust. Christine's children in the back row, sitting together, cried out in tears. Some of them looked away, unable to watch. Kody leaped up from his seat, yelling above the din. That's out of context. That's a lie. She manipulated that video. But his words were overcome by the shout and screams of all present. Christine's final blow. Christine stood firm, her voice ringing out loud and fierce above the commotion. Those are your own words, Kody. She directed her finger straight at him, her finger trembling in anger. You've spent years controlling us, making us feel nothing, making the children believe it was their fault that you were not there. But now everyone knows the truth. Christine's chest heaved as she struggled to maintain her dignity. You never cared about being a father. You cared about power, about control, and you used love as a tool to keep us all in control. She turned to the judge, her voice breaking as tears filled her eyes. Your Honor, I'm pleading with you. Please save my children from this man. They deserve so much better. They deserve a father who truly cares about them. The judge remained silent for an uncomfortable amount of time, clearly shaken. After that, he spoke to the courtroom. This evidence is quite disturbing. The court will be in recess for 1 hour as I examine this evidence. The consequences of the revelation. As the judge departed, the room erupted into pandemonium. Reporters struggled to share the dramatic revelations. Cameras flashed wildly as murmurs spread from every direction. Janelle marched towards Kody, her face red with anger. How could you, Kody? She bellowed. You gazed my children in the eye and declared your love for them. Mary trailed behind, sobbing uncontrollably. Were we all just props to you? Was any of it real? Kody attempted to say something, but Robin pulled on his arm frantically. Don't say anything, Kody. Please, just don't. Christine, on the other hand, collapsed into her chair, completely drained. She experienced a bittersweet combination of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth was finally revealed. Sadness for the terrible, irreparable wounds it had inflicted. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder. You were brave today, Christine. No matter what happens next, you've given those kids a voice. Christine nodded weakly, staring across the room at Kody. For the first time, he looked small, not the powerful, untouchable man he once was, but a cornered figure watching his empire crumble. And this was only the beginning. When court reconvened, Christine understood the ultimate fight would start, and Kody's demise would be complete. The doors of the courtroom burst open suddenly, the sound ringing out in the room like a pistol. Judge Daniels walked in, his face somber and inscrutable. Everyone lurched back into their chairs. The commotion of earlier traded for an uncomfortable, stifling hush. Christine's heart thudded so loudly, she was sure it would explode. Next to her, her attorney gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. But Christine hardly noticed. All she could see were her children, on the wooden bench, clustered together, eyes wide with fear, faces pale. This verdict wasn't just about her. It was about their future. In the distance, Kody sat stiff and defiant, his jaw clenched so hard that the veins in his neck stood out. Robin held onto his arm, mouthing frantic, desperate phrases. But once, Kody didn't respond to her. His eyes were focused on the judge like an animal about to strike. Janelle and Mary sat in the back pew, their faces etched with sorrow and anger. They hadn't spoken a word to Kody since the video had been shown, but their silence was louder than any shout. The air was heavy with tension as Judge Daniels pushed his glasses up onto the bridge of his nose and spoke. The judge speaks. Having fully considered the evidence before us, the judge started, his voice low and even. This court has come to a conclusion in the issue of custody and responsibility for the Brown children. Christine held her breath. All the nerves in her body screamed to listen to the next words. The judge went on, his voice weighed with displeasure. The evidence we heard yesterday from Mrs. Brown was extremely disturbing. We saw evidence of neglect, emotional damage and intentional deception on the part of Mr. Brown. Kody squirmed in his chair, his lip twisting into a sneer. "This is absurd," he said under his breath. But the microphone caught it loud and clear. Judge Daniels' gaze cut to him, piercing as a knife. "Mr. Brown, you will keep quiet until I am done. Am I clear?" Kody scowled but remained silent. The judge then faced the court once more. Most damning of all was the video testimony. Mr. Brown's own words, showing outright disdain for his children. The court cannot disregard the effect those words will have on their emotional health. Christine pressed a shaking hand to her lips as tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had relived that video in her mind so many times, wondering if she was being crazy to share it. Now listening to the judge mention it, she was both validated and crushed. Her attorney spoke softly. "This is good. He's on our side." But Christine couldn't celebrate. Regardless of what the judge had to say after this, the wounds inflicted on the hearts of her children could never be completely healed. The judge's ruling. Judge Daniels cleared his throat, his face serious. "It is the order of this court that sole physical and legal custody of the minor children shall be granted to Mrs. Christine Brown." The courtroom erupted with gasps and whispers. Christine's body slumped in relief as tears ran freely down her cheeks. Her kids started crying openly, holding each other. For the first time in years, they had felt safe. But the judge wasn't through. "Furthermore," he went on, his voice rising above the commotion, "Mr. Brown is to undergo mandatory counseling prior to when he can petition for visitation rights. He will also have to make financial restitution for money stolen from accounts for his children's benefit." At that, Kody blew up. Kody's meltdown. "This is crazy," Kody bellowed, jumping to his feet. "You can't take my children from me. This is a fabrication. Christine manipulated everyone. She enough." Judge Daniels boomed, thumping his gavel with so much force that it seemed to reverberate like thunder. Kody stopped short in his rant, his chest puffing, face burning red. "You will sit down and behave respectfully," the judge instructed. "Your conduct in this court only substantiates the court's ruling." Kody's knees seemed to buckle, and he collapsed back into his chair, shaking with fury. Robin wrapped her arms around him, whispering through sobs, "We'll fix this, Kody, we'll fix this somehow." But Kody didn't respond. For the first time, he looked utterly defeated, like a man who had just realized his empire was gone. Christine's moment of strength. Christine stood slowly, tears streaming down her face, but her chin lifted high. "Thank you, Your Honor," she whispered. "Not only for me, but for my children. They deserve an opportunity at a life without fear and manipulation." The judge nodded respectfully, with a small nod. "This court is here to serve the innocent, Mrs. Brown. I hope you and your children find peace in the future." Christine looked over at her children. They were standing now, stretching out to her, their faces aglow with relief and hope. Her heart almost exploded when she spread her arms and they surged into them. The family fractures. At the same time, Janelle and Mary approached Kody, their faces inscrutable. Janelle's voice trembled with rage as she towered over him. "You lied to me, Kody. To all of us. I stood up for you. I gave you opportunity after opportunity, and you spit in our faces." Mary's tone was softer but laced with raw hurt. "Did you ever really love us, Kody? Or were we just stepping stones on your path to Robin?" Kody said nothing. He couldn't. The force of their words smothered him more than any judge's verdict could. Janelle turned away, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm done," she said firmly. "You'll never see my kids again." Mary lingered for a moment longer, staring at him like she was seeing a stranger. Then she followed Janelle out of the courtroom, leaving Kody and Robin alone. Kody's final plea. As Christine gathered her children to leave, Kody suddenly stood and shouted across the room, "Christine, don't do this." His voice shook, desperation seeping through his rage. "They're my children too. You can't just wish me away from their lives." Christine stilled, then slowly swiveled to face him. Her eyes shone with tears, but her voice was a steel rod. "You erased yourself, Kody," she said softly. "All I did was stop lying." Her words sliced through the air like a knife. Kody stepped backward in shock, his mouth opening and closing silently. Christine did not give him time to collect himself. She swung around and left, her children's hands held tightly in hers. Outside the courtroom, the minute Christine emerged outside, cameras clicked frenziedly, reporters yelling questions. Christine, how do you feel about the verdict? What do you want to tell Kody now? Do you ever believe your family will heal?" Christine didn't hesitate to reply. She led her children through the throng, deflecting them from the mayhem. But as she got to the steps, she turned to stand and face the cameras for a second. For 1 second, her voice was strong and steady. "This isn't revenge," she said. "This is about keeping my kids safe and ending a cycle of hurt. Kody might have attempted to silence us, but today, the truth prevailed." The audience cheered and clapped. Christine turned and left, children fanning out around her like a human wall of love and hope. The final scene inside in the departing courtroom. Kody sat by himself at the defendant's table. Robin knelt by him, holding his hand, but he didn't budge. His eyes were sunken, gazing blankly into the area where Christine once was. The formidable patriarch of the Brown clan had become nothing but a shattered individual adrift in the ruin of his own decisions. Judge Daniel's gavel still rang in his mind, an eerie reminder of all that he had forfeited. Christine's voice-over ending for YouTube. As the screen fades to black, Christine's voice plays softly over the final images of her walking away with her children. "For so long I believed our pain was just the price we had to pay for love. But love shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't break you or make you feel small. Today we took our first step toward healing. And whatever the future holds, my kids will at last understand. They were always enough."